Okay, hello everyone.
Hello.
Okay, thank you for coming to my presentation. So the topic today is the Japanese population crisis. I'm sure you are all aware of the problem facing Japan today, and I'm sure you know a lot more about this topic than I do. So I hope that today we can have a very active discussion about this topic. So let me start off by saying there are four main problems that Japan faces today in regards to its population. First is the marriage rate. So the marriage rate in Japan is low. Every year there are not so many people getting married, and in general people are getting married later and later. The second problem is the birth rate. Even after they get married, families don't have many children. The third problem is the female work participation rate. So even though Japan has many educated women, a low percentage of them participate in the workforce. And finally, the immigration rate. Japan has a relatively low immigration rate in comparison to other modern nations. Any questions about this? Okay. So I'd like to discuss these four problems with you today. So first, let's look at the population decline. So this is this data is the increase or decrease in the Japanese population every year from 1947. So after 1947, there were about 1.5, almost 2 million people adding to the population of Japan every year. And this continued for quite a long time. Around the 1980s, that number started to decline, and today it's negative. So the population of Japan is not growing anymore, it's decreasing. So every year about 200,000 or 300,000 people are being removed from the population. So for example, in 2015, 1 million babies were born and 1.3 million people died. So the total effect is that 300,000 people are being removed from the Japanese population. Any comments about this? Anything you want to share or add?
It's the left top. It's the first baby boomer.
Yeah.
And next top of mountain, it's the baby boomers' children. 30 years later.
Right.
1965, maybe Hiroyama or something like that.
Yes, it's a special case.
Special case. Why the 1957 or 55 or 7 when it hit the lowest except for 1965. What was decreasing?
This year's baby is just 1 million.
Right.
Just 1 million.
Right.
And the baby boomer 1947 is about 2 million.
Right.
Twice.
Right.
My generation is before World War II, over 2 million.
Over 2 million.
I think the decline of 1960 was caused by government policy. Japanese government took, I don't know, it was directly or it was not directly. Japanese government tried to stop growing the number of babies. So maybe not openly the Japanese government recommend the kind of abortion.
Yeah.
They did, they took the policy, I heard,
Mm.
1960,
Really?
because the rapid growing number, the population just after World War II.
Mhm. So the Japanese government tried to control the population.
Control, yes, they
Okay.
did, I heard.
Okay.
Prime Minister Abe, the goal is birth rate, it's 1.8.
Mm.
Now it's 1.41.
Right.
Now 1.41.
Right.
It's just 1 million.
Right.
And birth rate is 2. It's 1.5 million.
Right.
It's no decline, population decline. It's the keep
Yes.
now population.
Right.
1.5 million, 150万人.
Right.
It's a better population. But now it's only 1 million.
Why do you think there's such a steep decline from this time, from 1975? Why do you think there was such a sudden decline in the population?
Economic affairs.
Okay.
いやいや、それはね、1990なんです。エコノミックリセッション。
The oil shock, the first oil shock was happened in 1974. 昭和40年、46年。
But
After that, the 高度経済成長to 安定成長 that happened in 1975 and 1972 or 77 or
1980 to 1990, this decade, it's world number one economic developing country in Japan. Japan is world number one.
Mm-hmm.
1980, 90 from 1980 to 1990.
Japan as number one.
Japan is one third GDP all the world. It's the very greatest developing country.
Population was decreased.
From 1990 bubble eruption, after that decline,
Okay.
20 years. Deflation.
Until 19.
Yeah, I think probably it isn't related to the bubble bursting because the Japanese GDP generally was growing up until around 1990.
Yes, 1990.
So that's here, right? So the population started to decline much earlier, before 1990. So probably it's not related to the bubble bursting
So,
in Japan.
Financially,
Any other ideas? It's probably more social reasons.
In this period, marriage environment was changing very rapidly. Until then, women's workers should quit until 25 because if past 25, she became past over 25. She couldn't find his husband, so it was believed. But in the period 1980 or 1990, more women would like to work after 25 or after 30 also. If they quit their regular job, they can take regular job again. So and more women work until 30 or past 30, and
Okay.
then they will marry.
Okay.
when they started, the government started a policy of gender-free or promotion. When was that?
Equal,
E-
right?
Equality, gender-free,
workplace.
gender-free or the
19.
in the cabinet they started they
1980ぐらいじゃない80ぐらいフェミニズム。
1990.
いや、そんなに遅く。1980ぐらい。
1985 was the Tsukuba Expo 85. そうそうそう。昭和60年。1985. At that
Maybe
time,
late 80s, maybe late 80s, maybe Japanese government changed their policy.
introducing
Yeah, before then, yeah.
more women's
Yeah,
participation
yeah.
in the workforce.
But before then,
They believed
due
that
to increasing of
if you are
yeah,
over,
yeah.
if you are over 25 and not
Mm.
get married, don't get married, you are too late or something. People
but
believe?
and
I don't
yeah.
remember.
Maybe I think after 80, maybe higher, maybe maybe inefficient worker in the working place in many companies, so they need more worker. So maybe it's easy to take job even for women. So maybe so possibilities なんだ maybe until 80, but maybe after maybe around 90, maybe government policy also supports the trend women would like to work.
Okay, let's keep looking. So this is the Japanese population this is 1870. From 1870 until about 2000, the Japanese population was growing at a very consistent rate. And now it's starting to decline, and in red is the estimate. That's the government estimate for how far the Japanese economy, the Japanese population will decline in the future. Okay?
Is it deduct the Taiwanese or Korean?
What?
Japanese government occupied,
Yeah.
Japan occupied
Yeah.
Taiwan and South Korea,
Right.
and then maybe Japanese government count the number of population in Taiwan or South Korea. So
Well, I don't know if they
Mm.
counted that
Mm.
population, but
mm,
I don't think this counts that population. Probably doesn't include that population. Okay, this is the number of births. The number of births every year. So you can see after the war, it was over 2.5 million. And today it's around 1 million. So every year, 1 million babies are being born. This is the fertility rate. The fertility rate, which is the number of babies per family, per women. Okay? So after the war, it was very, very high, 4.5. So each woman would have 4.5 babies. And today, it's much lower, around 1.4. And this is the marriage rate. So the average age of marriage is 29.3 years for women. And this chart is the number of marriages every year. So the total number of marriages is declining.
Our generation is about 24 or 25 ladies.
Right.
5 years
Right.
older.
Why do you think the number of marriages is decreasing?
Financial reasons,
Okay.
non-regular workers, they cannot have expect a bright future. They think good job, high salary, wages are getting class lift getting higher and higher by the young men. So upper class people can get married, but the lower class people are worried about the concerns of whether they can support family or.
Maybe some even elite class maybe not worry about financial, but people or Japanese people want to have career, and some enjoy to be in their career, and so if they leave the job, they would rather worry they lose their career. Okay, I get married, and then after that, oh, what shall I do then? So they rather become career women nowadays. Perhaps not only in Japan, but in other countries as well, even in the country.
When more ladies are getting independent.
Yes, getting, and then they happy to be single. They even they are already almost 40. They say, oh, enjoy life. It's like it's nice here. They don't worry about much because they have a very nice social position, status quo, and the career path is going up.
Yeah. I actually agree with her more than you. Probably, if the women don't have good job, if they're poor, they want to marry. They want to marry to a man who can work and make money for them. So the poorer you are, the faster you want to marry. But if you're a woman and you have a job, then you don't need to marry so quickly because you can make enough money.
I read that a woman, married woman, quit her job after married, and the money, she would lose the money about 200 million yen.
Mm-hmm.
Compared to if she, compared to the case if she had kept working.
Okay.
The loss is 200 million yen
Right.
in her whole life.
Right. Because she stopped working.
Yes.
Right. Okay. That makes
It's
sense.
very, very huge.
Yes.
Immense amount of.
Yeah. So many women don't want to do that. They don't want to give up that money.
No.
Right. Any other comments or questions?
Very simple question. So from this graph, it's difficult to say the marriage rate is becoming low because even in 1980
Mm-hmm.
and 1950,
Yeah.
it's already very small rate, right? So I think something happened 1970 or around 1970, and it's increasing in that period, but it's declining again. So, but it's already almost same as 1950.
Sure. Well, you have to understand, this is not the rate of marriage. This is not the percentage of the population that's getting married. This is the total population getting married. So in 1950, there's 600,000 people getting married. That's 600,000 out of a total of 70 million Japanese people. You understand? So the total population of Japan in 1950 was much smaller. So as a percentage, there was a much higher percentage of people getting married. But today, the population of Japan is 130 million. So it's a big population, but few people getting married.
Compared to the sharp decline of the birth rate, the marriage rate, this marriage rate does not look like
Again,
decrease.
I would say the same thing that I said to him. the
Ah,
total marriages
marriage.
looks roughly similar, but if you compare it to the population, the marriage rate is probably declining faster.
In 1945, the total population is much lower.
Yeah.
Compared with today.
Yeah.
So this graph shows the total number of marriages,
Yeah, the total number of marriages.
not percentages.
Yes, exactly. So think about, in 1947, that's after the war, so many Japanese people died in the war, so the population was low, and still the number is this high. So the population was low, but the marriage rates must have been very, very high. Today, the population is very high, and the marriage rate must be very low.
The young people's number is also higher, become larger in 2013.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. Yeah.
It's 1945 and 1946
Yeah.
is low.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
after World War II.
Yes.
And total average is low marriage population.
Yes.
I think
Yes.
it's 2 or 3 years before. 何？そうするともうちょいこう。いつベビーブームエラーですよね。あれ1947 to 1949, 3 years. It's a very high baby boom,
Yes.
first baby boomer
Yes.
generation.
Okay, let's look a little bit about Japanese population history. Japan has experienced population growth for hundreds of years. Japan reached its peak population of 130 million people in 2012. This made Japan the 10th most populous nation in the world. By the way, does this surprise you that Japan is number 10 in the world? Is that surprising to you? Many Japanese people talk to me as if Japan is very small. They say, "Oh, we're so small. We're a small island country." But I said, "No, you're huge. You're 10 in the world. One of the largest countries in the world. Top 10. Very, very large."
Total number of people
Yeah,
of the nation.
yeah, yeah.
And after World War II, its Japanese population is number 6 maybe. And now from 6 to 10
Sure.
now. But after 1940 to 1950 era, it's number 6 Japan. Yes. Only 74 million people after World War II Japan, but it's number 6 or number 7.
Sure. In any case, the Japanese people are one of the major ethnic groups in the world. Along with population growth, Japan generally achieved high GDP and economic growth. However, in recent years, Japan has seen negative population growth along with little or no GDP growth. Just in 2015, 1 million babies were born and 1.3 million people died. So in total, 300,000 people were removed from the population. According to some estimates, by 2060, Japanese population may be just 80 million. And over 50% will be over 65 years old. So this is a major problem. The country cannot continue if 50% are 65. Because 65 people, they eat, they need clothes, but they don't work. So the country cannot continue. This is a very, very big problem, right? Any questions about this?
45 years.
Your offering is very nice presentation. This but France is same situation. But France government much money to young people.
Yes.
The Japanese government little money young people and much many money old people.
Mm.
It's opposite policy.
Yeah.
Our generation is very bad, and important people is young people, and much money to young people. It's the birth rate and marriage rate is younger. Its population is increasing. Our generation is not important.
In France, they recovered the total fertility rate. Maybe in the last 5 years or 10 years, in France they regained,
Yes.
Yes, now
recovered.
Yes.
Due to maybe
Yes, yes.
due to the policy towards younger
change.
people.
Yes, yes. 20 years ago, French birth rate is now 1.4. But French government changed policy, young people much money, and now it's 2.0. It's keeping population.
But the Abe administration, Prime Minister Abe has said
1.8,
that his government is going to give 3,000 yen to poor elders.
Yes.
Why?
Every young people money. It's Japanese developing. It's very important policy.
Well, he probably says that, so, because most of the people who vote are older people.
Yes.
Young people don't vote.
It's just for election.
Sure,
Mm.
sure.
The birth rate is maybe tricky because if the birth rate became over 2, but the decreasing of population continue for some decades because the portion of younger generation is lower than elderly. So if the birth rate became better, but losing population should continue for some decades. So
Sure.
Some years ago, I became a member of local community, and I attended the meeting of the local community, and most of the members were elders, over 60s, and I was surprised to know that, and I also was surprised that the budget of the local community, much of the budget money was spent for elders in that local area,
In the neighborhood.
in my
In
neighborhood,
the neighborhood.
and a little money was spent for children in my neighborhood, and how to spend the money was decided by the elders.
Yeah.
Seniors.
Oh, young people didn't have the right to say about that.
It's Japanese income tax or total tax is now 51 trillion yen, but 30 trillion yen is spent social welfare here. 60% is social welfare money. 60. And Lehman era, 7 years ago, its total tax is 38 trillion yen. But social welfare money is 30. Only 8 trillion yen is Japanese true budget. And shortage is Japanese bond twice. It's now Japanese economy is up 51 or 57 maybe last year tax, and 30 trillion is half of social welfare money. It's social welfare money is very high, and older people.
But
Every-
the population is big, so it should be. It's natural because we are so many.
but it's the 何inequality. Young people and old people. Young people is very shortage of welfare money, and old people is much money.
I think in France, also elder people are treated well, and the government is putting stress to encourage young people to live better life. So they have some policies, political policies, but they don't know elder people, I think, because they are not quiet if they are treated like that.
For example, France education fee
Yes.
university, it's only 10万円.
Yes, from many decades ago,
Yes.
since many years ago, France education.
It's very low.
Free, yes.
But in Japanese education fee university is national university. It's now 70 or
Yes.
700,000.
Per average.
Yes, yes. And private university in Christian university is 1.2 million yen. Maybe it's
Almost double.
Yes, yes.
So the government, Japanese government should think which is important. So I think their way of thinking, balancing is not good. They should invest on young people's life, I think.
The young people after graduate scholarship loan pay back.
Also good.
Yes, yes. And the marriage rate is later.
Yeah, maybe always scholarship means, it is not a return,
Yes.
pay back, but in Japan scholarship means we should pay back.
That is not a
So,
scholarship.
so
It's
student
a
loan,
loan.
so it is student loan, so name is 奨学金, so same scholarship, but different, so.
And it's a chain effect, chain reaction. If the young people will work too much, and then I have to pay back, and then I have to earn more for the future. So it's like the marriage life is being deprived. So how can you expect a high birth rate if their age is already 40, or which is also not good for babies? So sometimes there's already some not so good effect on the whole baby's health. So the younger the better.
Yes, yes.
So it's a cycle. So it's better to have scholarship. For example, in Philippines, the scholarship it's like the top 10% of the school will have the scholarship, but they don't have to pay back. So their gratitude is that, I have the scholarship, I have to work hard, and I have to give my loyalty to the government, I have to work more. So they do the gratitude by working their best to excel and to help the society, and then sometimes they dream big and they go abroad. So perhaps that's the reason why many think going abroad, because we want to help not only the country, but if we go to the country, we also represent our country. So it's like at the same time helping.
You say that the students who was given the scholarship feel obliged to
Not
Yeah.
obliged. Gratitude is like paying back what I receive as a gratitude is more on saying thank you in a nice way, but it's not obligation, but more on responsibility, but appreciation, consciousness.
Conscious,
Consciousness.
yes.
But is it compulsory for people to pay back?
No, no.
But they just pay back for in return for their appreciation for the government.
But the payment is not finances. It's their work. It's their
They work for the country and.
yeah. For example, you go to the university and then you don't have to pay, for example, 50% or something, and then they will work for the government's offices, and then they will a project, something like that. So it's the workforce, it's the labor, it's their time, their talents, and their capability to improve the community.
What about the people who goes to who works in the private companies, or not in the government force, government entities,
Well,
private companies, the same?
the same. So they excel rather because they don't have anything to worry about. They just have to focus on study, and then they just have to focus on.
That's a real scholarship.
Yeah, that's the real scholarship. But since population is also very big, so they have to compete. They have to strive for.
Okay, let's continue.
Yeah.
So this graph shows the government forecast of the birth rate against the real birth rate. So this is the replacement rate, so it's above 2. So we need at least 2 babies per family to maintain the population, right? This is the government estimate, the government forecast, right? This blue line. And this black line is the real rate. So every several years, every 5 years, the government predicts the birth rate. And every year they've been wrong for the past, 30 years. They've predicted much higher than the real birth rate. Yeah, too optimistic. Well, why do you think the government has been too optimistic?
In order to support the government, their regime, or in order to get more votes
Sure.
in election.
Sure.
They don't think about the future.
Government estimate are always too optimistic because if they say maybe serious situation, it's estimate or plan. So why you should try to improve? So everyone say so accused government is accused from people or progress. So many people say government should promote fertility rate or something. So government should say maybe Japan comment should always should be optimistic.
Okay.
They should learn the lesson from the history.
So this is the stock price of the Nikkei 225, the average stock price. So from 1949, the Japanese stock market experienced very, very high growth, and since 1990, it's been very, very terrible growth, negative. And this is similar. This is the GDP growth in Japan. So from 1950s to late 1970s, the GDP was growing around 8 or 10% a year, 8 to 10% GDP growth. In the 1980s, it slowed down to about 4 or 5%, which is still very good. And since the 1990s, the GDP growth has been almost zero, basically zero, maybe 1%. So if the population decreases, but the GDP increases, that's okay. Because the young people, they're much more productive, and they can support the older generation because their GDP is higher. But if your GDP is low and your population is high, then it's a problem. Do you understand that?
Seniors don't work.
Yeah, seniors don't work and the young people are not productive. That's a problem. If the seniors don't work, but the young people are very, very productive, that's okay. So, the looming crisis. Japan has a low birth rate of 1.4 babies per family. That's ranked 188 in the world out of 200. So of 200 countries in the world, Japan is ranked 188. So they have one of the lowest birth rates in the world. To compare to some big countries, China's birth rate is 1.7. So even China is higher than Japan, 1.7. America is 1.9. UK and France is 2.0. And India is 2.5. So India has a very high birth rate. Any questions about that?
Why is China 1.0? Because the political policy.
それは
One child policy.
government law is only one from 1980, but second children is pay extra money pay. It's okay. The
So-
rich people is have 2 children.
So,
You
so
Pay money.
money or tax or more
Tax is more tax.
let me explain this rule a little bit. This rule is actually very complicated. They have the one-child policy, but first off, like he said, if you have a second baby, there's no real punishment. The only thing is you lose some financial benefits. So if you have a second baby, you don't get social welfare after you retire. If you're rich, it doesn't matter. You don't need that money. So rich families, they just choose to have extra baby if they want. And they just, because they're rich, it doesn't matter.
But I think rich population is very small.
Sure, let me
in
continue.
China.
The second thing is the policy does not apply to minority ethnic
Yes,
groups.
yes.
So
55 minority ethnic, it's 2 or 3 or 4, no limit.
So for example, in,
가민族
in China there are Tibetan people, there are Islam people, there are Uyghur people, Mongolians, there's Koreans. So there's a lot of ethnic groups in China.
Yes.
So the policy does not apply to them. Okay.
excluded.
Third, the policy does not apply to people if both of your parents are only children. So if my father is only child and my mother is only child, then I can have many children.
Many children, not only one but 2.
Yeah.
More than 2.
And then another rule is if you live in the countryside, so not the city, but if you work on a farm, for example, you live in the countryside, the rule does not apply to you because you need more children to help you work in the farm. So the rule is very, very complicated and it's very flexible. So the actual birth rate is much higher
Yes.
than 1.
And なんていうの no registered baby. In the city office, the registered 1, but another second child is no registered. It's a secret baby.
But the number doesn't count. in
It's that's registered only or not. だから it's more high, maybe.
The truth is more.
Yes.
I would say
Maybe.
the biggest factor is that if you live in the countryside, the rule doesn't apply to you. So most of the population growth in China comes from the countryside.
But in countryside in China, because of the one-child policy,
Yeah.
many of the farmers do not have the successors. So they try to still abduct the child from, it's a kind of crime, and about 200,000 children were abducted at the,
Yeah,
in China,
sure.
I heard.
I've never heard, I don't know, I've never heard of that, but
Yes,
it's
about
possible,
two-
yeah.
yes. It's a serious problem, I heard, in China. Missing children, 200,000 small children are missing in China. A year.
Abducted and adopted, no?
Adopted. And they want to, farmers in countryside in China want to,
Labor
some
force.
children to take their farmland or
sure.
their latter life.
Yeah.
To take some, they wanted to be taken care of by some young children.
Sure. Okay, additionally, Japan has a very low immigration rate. So, in the Japanese population, only 1.9% of the Japanese population are immigrants. Okay? Compare that to the United Kingdom, 12.4% of the United Kingdom are immigrants, 11.8% of France, 14.3% of the United States, and 20.7% for Canada. So compared to other developed countries, Japan has a very low immigration rate. So if you have low immigration rate, you have less workers and you have a less population. Another point, Japan is number 2 for suicide rates among developed countries. So only Korea is higher. Korea is number 1. So Japan has the second highest suicide rates among developed nations. So even the people who are working, they have too much stress and they commit suicide. So the working population decreases. So the combination of Japan's low birth rates, low immigration rates, makes a looming population crisis. Okay, this is the Japanese public debt. This is the national debt. So basically for 20 years, for the past 20 years, the Japanese national debt is growing. So the government, the Japanese government, they borrowed a lot of money and they owe a lot of money. They must pay back a lot of money. But because they have to pay money for the seniors, they need to keep borrowing money. So the national public debt is increasing. And it's a problem because the working population is decreasing, so they can't collect much taxes from them. So how can they pay off the public debt? Okay, so let me ask you a question. Why does Japan have low marriage rate and low birth rates? So we identified that this is one of the major problems. What are some of your ideas for why Japan has a low marriage rate and low birth rate?
To raise children is cost a lot of money.
Sure.
That's one
Educating
reason.
children is very costly and more and more
エデュケーションフィーがあるんですよ。エデュケーションフィー。フランスガバメント is low education fee and compulsory education is free. Normally, the parents don't pay compulsory education fee.
But I wonder how French government can afford that policy. because I know some French who are elder and with the same educational background, their pension is very good, and they want to retire as soon and as early as possible. So their retiree life is enough and is good for them. I don't think, I don't say that all of the elderly people can have a very good life, but in France, many elder people can have a good life compared with Japanese elder people. And still they spend a lot of money on education, and they have some army budget, and I don't understand how they can manage.
It's French consumption tax is 20%. Japanese consumption tax is only 8%. It's 12% is low, Japan. And
Yes, but how to use the money, how to use the budget is, I think, quite different. They are philosophy.
Not how to collect money, but how to spend.
Even
yes,
for
On
instance,
which
if Japan has 10%, we didn't have consumption tax before, but we have now still nearly 10%. But the life does not become better. So I think the way of spending and the way of thinking is quite different.
Well, I would never mind if the consumption tax would be 20% if education would be free or the medical expenses is free.
yes.
So the problem is not how to collect the taxpayers' money, but how we should spend taxpayers' money on.
In America, education is free, so you don't have to pay for elementary school or middle school, high school. So
Universities are not free.
universities,
It's
it's hard to explain. Well, many universities are free because most universities have a fund, so they will pay for the education. Yeah, most private universities have a fund.
American universities 4 times than Japan education fee. Japanese education fee is 1 million, and American private university is 4 million to 6 million.
But let me finish what I was saying. So elementary school, middle school, and high school in America is free. So you can have many children, and they can all get education for free. So families don't think about the cost of education. So I have a friend in America, and their family is very, very poor. I mean, very, very, very poor. But they have 10 children. They have so many children. And they all live in a very small house. They all sleep together.
Even maybe lunch or the school meals are free too.
School meals are not free, but they're very cheap. For example, when I was in high school, to get a box lunch was about $1.50 for a box lunch. So it's very, very cheap.
In Mid City has an international sister city of Anaheim in America. When I visited there, the principal of the Sunkist Elementary School, which was a Japanese American, and he told me that they supply morning meals to the poor, very poor children, because they don't have, they are not given meal breakfast at their homes, and so they are very hungry when they come to school.
Right.
So they cannot concentrate on studying. So they had to, but they were free. So, anyway, elementary and middle school and senior school, very low prices for school meals.
Okay, but so you brought up a point that the birth rate is low because it's very expensive to raise children. The cost of education or just the cost of food is very high. But that's not only Japan, right? That affects every country in the world. So what's special about Japan that makes the birth rate low? Because any country in the world, the education cost is high. Right?
ジャパニーズレギュラーワーカーとレギュラー正社員と非正規ね。It's from 1990 now 1/3 worker it's regular.
Not regular.
Not regular. But our generation is everybody is regular worker. It receives the salary. But now it's very severe condition. Young people. It's one reason I think. Japanese economy is deflation for 20 years from 1990 to now. Before Abenomics, it's a very long deflation. It's young people, it's low.
After the
Yes,
expiration
yes,
of the
yes.
bubble economy.
Yes, it's one reason. And next reason is marriage age is from 24 to 29. It's the birth rate is young lady is more baby なんていうのバース確率20 ladies it's immediately baby
Right.
get but 40 or 35 lady it's low rate is low. Yes, yes. Fertility rate.
But what you said, the cost of education. Cost of education affects most of the countries in the world.
Sure. I mean, any country in the
Any
world,
country in the
you have to pay for education costs.
The same as in Japan, but the Japan birth rate is very low. Why is that? Your point.
Yeah, that's my question.
But the,
Well, how about the working hours?
Right, that's a good point. Yeah, so working hours will be
Yes.
different by country.
Japanese working hours
the
extremely long.
very bad, very bad custom of I read an article that the maternity harassment.
Yes, maternity harassment.
When you get not holiday, but the absence of the
Maternity leave.
Maternity leave.
after maternity leave, it's very hard. In most of the very small companies, not major companies, but smaller companies, the workers in smaller companies are very hard, especially I'm talking about women. Women can get back to the normal, the position as they had before taking maternity leave. So they are fired, and then they are allowed to be a non-regular worker, or keep on working the same job, the same amount of work, but the salary, the wage cuts maybe half. Maternity harassment.
It's funny that you say that Japanese people have less children because they worry about the cost. I think the exact opposite. I want to have many children because they're going to each work and they're going to make a lot of money. I mean, it'll cost money for them to grow up, but once they grow up, 18, 19, 20 years old, each of them will work and our family salary will be very, very high.
So you say it's like a kind of investment?
Yeah, it's like an investment.
Okay.
That's how I think.
Mhm.
So I want to have